welcome to this edition of The Frontline from FS News and Public Affairs with Maron Albangco. So this week, we will be discussing an extraordinary venture by China and what could that mean for all of us. So my guests for this week are Maricar Batocabe, Julia Francine Bagay, Monica Jane Alcantara, Edgie Baldeo, Diana Rose Banzuela. And also the other side, we have Cheung, Kathleen, Alipio, Chezca Mae, Alfuerto. So, a warm welcome to all of you. So, a huge amount of topics that will be discussed this week, but today we are going to focus on China because the country will plays an important part to further shape globalization and is taking the lead to create the world's largest economic platform. As you might remember, in 2013, President Xi Jinping launched its important cooperation initiative of building the Silk Road Economic Belt and the 21st Century Maritime Silk Road. The initiative, and the Belt Road Initiative rather, is to create the world's largest platform for economic operation. It comprises of physical connections, policy coordination, trade and financing collaboration, and social and cultural cooperation. This Chinese economic and strategic agenda would link the two ends of Eurasia, as well as Africa and Oceania, along two routes, one overland and one maritime. The initiative was derived from the Overland Silk Road Economic Belt and the 21st Century Maritime Silk Road. It could be traced in the history more than 2,000 years ago, when the Chinese imperial envoy Zhang Shan assisted the establishment of the Silk Road. The name came from one of China's most important exports, silk. The BRI plans to use free trade agreements and infrastructure projects that would link roads, bridges, ports, and railways to create a modern Silk Road, together with gas pipelines and power plants. The survival of the ancient Silk Road includes both an economic land belt through Eurasia and a maritime road to connect coastal Chinese cities to Africa and also the Mediterranean region. With the geographical proximity and economic importance of the ASEAN, or commonly known as Association of Southeast Asian Nations, China and ASEAN's growing economies are part of the focus of the Belt and Road Initiative. The focus of the Belt and Road Initiative will further bring together two of the world's most dynamic economic regions by strengthening economic linkages among the 10 member states of ASEAN and China. ASEAN and China are seeking to double their trade value, setting a target of almost $1 trillion by the end of the year 2020. So the BRI brings great opportunities but also presents risks for smaller countries. So for this week, we will be discussing how does the region engage in the initiative and its risks and benefits to the region. Okay, so let's start off the discussion with Chezca. So Chezca, what can you tell to us the other points of the BRI, or the Belt and Road Initiative?
So as you can see, countries with huge infrastructure needs and without prominent conflict with China have shown enthusiasm in participation, such as Kazakhstan and Pakistan. Even those countries with precarious relationships with China, such as Vietnam and Philippines. So they express willingness to participate. So they set aside those heated controversies again in territorial dispute.
So others are viewing the BRI, or the initiative from China, economic initiative from China, similar to what happened after the Second World War, or what commonly known as the Marshall Plan. So is there any similarities between the two ideas, or between the two initiatives rather?
Yes, actually the comparison of BRI and Marshall Plan relies behind the rationale that they both serve similar goals.
So, considering the uniqueness of the geopolitical features of the region, the ASEAN region, others are thinking that this geopolitical project, as they consider it, as unpredictable. Why?
As a geopolitical project, unpredictable because of the actors undertaking different goals with divergent motivations.
Yes, of course, divergent motivations.
It has a compromising capability
Okay.
to change and influence space and decisions at a range of geographic spaces.
Okay, yes, of course, considering the different geographical scales. So, thank you very much. So, let's go now with you, Kate, or Kathleen, rather. So, I think you already knew this because in the previous decades, there is an idea of having an American dream by every people in all corners of the world. But now, as we enter in this new phase of globalization, there is somehow a shift from the American dream to the Chinese dream. So, do you think that the BRI is an important strategy of China in order to attain this kind of idea?
Yes, China will use the BRI as a strategy in order to achieve the Chinese dream. And with that, China will be able to create a large area of influence in the world. President Xi Jinping's foreign policy is aiming towards the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation that consists of three principles. First is to attain stability in Sino-American relations. Second is to create a sphere of influence in the international community. And lastly, not to compromise on its core interests, including the South China Sea. And since the establishment of BRI, China's foreign policy have seen changes towards Asia. With the South China Sea issue, China has set shift from its principle of bilateral agreement and started to accept limited multilateral agreement. What China aims is to strengthen its relations to its surrounding environment and also to take action in multilateralism in ASEAN.
Of course, so there's also a shift of approach from bilateralism to multilateralism, and also a shift from multilateralism, a multilateral approach towards the Asian neighbors. So that's a very good thing to know. So now let's continue the discussion with you, King. So your colleagues has discussed a while ago the things that lays the foundation of BRI, the very main inception idea of the initiative, and many more. So for you, what do you think, aside from geographical challenges, the challenges of the BRI in implementation, external challenges or internal challenges also?
Internally, China faces severe economic imbalances, rising economic inequality, and mounting environmental issue. So what's more is that China still has regional disparity between the East and the West. So this makes it hard for China to connect its plans from the West to connect it to involved countries. Externally, we question how will China connect Asia to Europe and Africa. With these continents having different kind of policy making and legal systems from countries within. The level of economic development and cultural, religious beliefs, and practices. So it also raises skepticism if this is really a development or an agenda to strategically put China's dominance in geopolitics.
Yes, considering the enormity of the idea, the challenge is also it's also huge, and there's a high expectation for China on how to counter these challenges. So thank you very much for your inputs. Now, so King a while ago cited some challenges aside from the geographical challenges. He also mentioned some challenges in the approaches on how to connect these large geopolitical spheres rather on achieving this initiative. So I wanna hear your thoughts on the risks and benefits. Or first for you, what is the benefits or what are the benefits? Because I think this is an enormous initiative from China, and of course it equates enormous benefits also. What do you think are the benefits of this initiative to ASEAN?
So the latent benefits from BRI for Southeast Asia could be very relevant because Southeast Asia is one of the priority regions for the improvement of physical connectivity under the BRI framework. And one of the benefits of BRI will be the region's possible economic growth through the improvement of infrastructure connectivity and also liberalization of trade and investments
by the elimination of trade and political barriers. And this would be very beneficial, as you can see, since Southeast Asia needs to focus consistently in infrastructure developments. As a matter of fact, there are already construction BRI projects in various parts of Southeast Asia. So basically, the largest benefit of BRI from the BRI will be infrastructure developments that will later on lead to the economic growth in Southeast Asia. Also, let me add, it is quite obvious that the winners from this China's new strategic move are banks, construction companies, infrastructure investors, consultants. The BRI still could enhance integration and foster countries' cooperation that might hopefully lead to the reduction of conflict and competition.
So she was saying a while ago that enhancing infrastructure through BRI will also enhance ASEAN connectivity, which is one of the important or essential goals for the ASEAN integration. But I want to ask you a different scenario. How about the other one, the risk of this BRI?
There are lingering unease over China's possible political motives in pursuing the Belt and Road Initiative. Some suspect that China might attempt to promote its influence on a larger scale, rather than just opening itself up to further trade and investment. Greece could be like China as an investor, would expect some kind of favorable treatment from the beneficiaries of the initiative. It could be near some favors of a political consideration with a wider significance. The war is especially pronounced here in Southeast Asia, where nations which have benefited from China's aid and investment might feel indebted towards and make some compromises. There are also concerns that it would expose participating countries to undue debt burden. They may struggle to pay back loans from huge infrastructure projects funded by Chinese companies and Chinese banks. Moreover, ASEAN countries participating in the Belt and Road Initiative could be economically dependent to China.
Okay, so aside from debts, debt trap, loans, you also cited one worry for the ASEAN region is the interference in terms of political interference aside from economic through BRI. So going back, the debt trap, one worry I think for most of the ASEAN region, how can they cope with this?
In regards to debt traps, repayment of debts from huge infrastructural loans is answerable by time. Benefits of infrastructure projects are long-term schemes. So, as time passes, it requires a high level of mutual trust and cooperation between ASEAN and China.
So it is interesting to know that everyone, or some of you, have shared important points regarding the BRI. So, for you, Mali, I want to ask, how can you wrap up everything that we discussed here? And what is the future prospect of this initiative, not just the stability of the ASEAN region as a key global player now, but also to the stability of the region of Asia?
Well, I can say that the ASEAN countries and China are absolutely necessary strategic partners, and both of them will be benefited with the BRI as it will strengthen the interdependence of the two. However, no one knows what can be drawn. It's the BRI could be a game changer, wherein it could affect the world not just in the aspect of the economy but also in the ranges of the politics and the military. And with that, the idea of the game changer, ASEAN must develop coordinated and careful approaches to have a balanced negotiation as well as relations with China. And also, especially when they have to face with the risks and challenges, and BRI may increase global economic cooperation. However, we shouldn't set aside the risks and conflicts or some interest like South China Sea dispute. And therefore, we should see BRI as a dynamic concept, and with that, ASEAN leaders must be critical and strategic with the objectives and motives of the China's BRI. We shouldn't focus on just one side, and we should look and recognize everything out of the box so we can avoid the over-dependence and such, as what how the Sevilla quoted that trying new things requires calculated and mutually inclusive approach to avoid the creating ground for political and economic disturbances.
So indeed, there is a high optimism to this new initiative, an enormous initiative, extraordinary initiative from China. But of course, for the ASEAN region, they must create a unified voice because they are not only espousing only a single interest, but the interest of the 10 member states. So it is really important to note on the things that you share. So thank you very much. Now, Edge, I think you heard, of course, the challenges that the BRI needs to face when partnering with the ASEAN. So what do you think are your recommendations? What are the proper recommendations for the part of those who created the idea so that they can create a very viable, a very efficient implementation of BRI in the ASEAN region, hearing from the challenges?
So for the recommendation, first, increase transparency. It is important for Belt and Road projects to follow international practice and increase transparency of the procedures. Policies of transparency reduce investment risk. Second, better implementation policies. BRI projects are huge infrastructure plans. Its implementation should be as efficiently and corruption-free as possible. It requires overcoming of logistical, political, and financial challenges, checking of implementing institutions and technicalities of infrastructure plans by ASEAN member countries. And the third one is continue to diversify sources of support in order to minimize risk of dependency on China. ASEAN member states should not just center on the integration to China, but to the rest of the world. Develop an efficient structure to match projects with different investors.
Members should empower their domestic industry in order to boost their national economy. As you all know, ASEAN members promote their national goods to each other. Maybe it's about time to promote a friendly competition in the ASEAN region. Another is to use a strategic and critical approaches in order to identify future challenges in the BRI project. We should consider to think about the possible consequences and outcomes before implementing decisions. And lastly, we need to have a more unified ASEAN. In order to advance and develop, ASEAN members should build a strong foundation before prioritizing ties with other non-ASEAN members.
So thank you very much, Diana, for that recommendation. So before we end the program, I would like to give my own personal input on this one. Because after hearing all their thoughts, it is really a requirement in globalization to coordinate with other nations, whether big or small countries. Countries should always be involved in every coordination and cooperation, because it is a requirement nowadays for every countries to be involved. Because if you want to be developed, or if you want to develop or prosper, coordination is a must. So, well, thank you very much to all our guests for joining us in today's program. So, I do hope that you will enjoy your semester break, if you have, of course. But for our part, we will be back again here, same time, same place next week to discuss the issues surrounding now and also how they shape the world. So, thank you very much for joining us. Enjoy your weekend. Bye-bye.